One of the town hall participants asked Bernie Sanders about his professed democratic socialist label. And of course, there's been a lot of fear mongering about this, and the way the question was framed definitely showed a little bit of that fear mongering. But nonetheless, here is Bernie Sanders answering a question about his political ideology. Take a look.
My father's family left Soviet Russia in 1979, fleeing from some of the very same socialist policies that you seem eager to implement in this country. So my question is, how do you rectify your notion of democratic socialism with the failures of socialism in nearly every country that has tried it?
And thank you for asking that question. Is it your assumption that I supported or believe in authoritarian communism that existed in the Soviet Union? I don't, I never have, and I opposed it. I believe in a vigorous democracy, but you have asked me the question about democratic socialism, fair question, and let me answer it. I happen to believe that in the United States, there is something fundamentally wrong when we have three families owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society, 160 million people. Something wrong when the top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 92%. Something very wrong when 49% of all new income today is going to the top 1%. And something is equally wrong when we have a corrupt political system made even worse by this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision, which allows billionaires to spend unlimited sums of money to elect candidates who represent the wealthy and the powerful. So answer number one to your question is a radical idea. Maybe not everybody agrees, but I happen to believe we should have a government that represents working families and not just the 1% and powerful corporations.
So, okay, I like the side eye in the beginning when he did that. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what a candidate like me would, how a candidate like me would fare. So Bernie is, after the side eye, is very soft. Thank you for the question, et cetera, et cetera. My inclination is to come out harder.
No, I mean, it wouldn't. The optics of that would be disastrous, especially for someone like Bernie Sanders, who's been accused, unfairly for being whatever, a bro, which is hilarious.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So I'd be like, look. First of all, there's a lot wrong in the framing of your question. Nobody's doing Soviet Russia over here. We're not taking over, sneaker factories and McDonald's, et cetera. So that's a talking point that you got from I don't know where, but it's not remotely true. Okay. Second of all, you said every socialist country is a failure. Also, preposterously false. Not even remotely true. Almost all of Northern Europe is socialist, and they're stunning successes. So. And you know what they have that we don't have? Great healthcare. You know what they have that we don't have? Daycare. So when you have kids, you don't have this impossible choice. Do I take care of my kids? Do I go to work? How can I possibly afford going to work if I got to pay for daycare? They have time off when they have kids. So no, socialism just means that the government does a better job of taking care of its citizens rather than its donors. So look, that's why I didn't love the answer, because it's super important for him to defeat this ridiculous talking point where people are comparing democratic socialism to communism. Yep. And so there's real communists now in the country, and it's particularly online, and some of them will watch this and hate me for it. But sorry, but I don't agree with communism, and Bernie Sanders doesn't agree with communism. So that's a different thing.
Even that you agree with it or don't agree with it, they're two different things. So to try to commingle them and make them the same thing, but we talked about this before, coming from Miami, where there's so many Cubans that come from Cuba that they use this as a trigger to scare them and say, look what they're trying to do here. But she was smug when she asked that question. That question came from. I know this, I know that. My family escaped the framing with the whole fear. That's the reason why you need to learn what you're talking about before you go out in front of America on camera and ask a question from such a arrogant place when you're sorely misinformed.
Your family goes through something. It's something that gives you a sense of why you came to the position that you did, but it doesn't mean that you're right.
Right.
Like, oh, my dad told me this, and who's your dad?
Yeah.
Why do I care? And so, look, I tell you the story about my dad, about how he was a farmer, had no opportunity, etc. Well, not to say that my dad's right about everything. It's to say that's why I'm a progressive, because we got a chance, and I want you to have a chance. Right. He got a free college education that catapulted us. And I want you to have that same opportunity. So it informs me, but that doesn't mean my dad is definitely right about, student loan debt.
My stepfather either, because my stepfather is from Cuba and he got arrested for riding a bike on the wrong side of the street. So when he hears communism, he gets nervous. But we have socialism in America?
Exactly. So what Bernie calls for is socializing, things that should be basic human rights. So healthcare, he wants to socialize healthcare. And healthcare to some extent is already socialized. I mean, you have Medicaid, you have Medicare. That is a product of socialism. And so, look, it's a failure of our education. It's a failure of our media, where we continuously allow people to make the mistake of confusing communism with socialism. It's also a failure of our media and our education for not revealing the great success of socialist programs in the European countries that you just mentioned, Cenk. Like, that is, again, a product of misinformation, a lack of knowledge, and that's not to say anything negative about the electorate. It's to say something negative about our society as a whole, where people are just easily persuaded that socializing medicine would lead to like the new Soviet era. That's not gonna happen.
Yeah, look, the more we talk about it, the more I don't love Bernie's answer. This is the one you really gotta be strong on, because this is the thing that they're using as to bludgeon you with. Propaganda, not just the right wing, but the corporate media is. Everybody keeps throwing out like, socialist, this country will never elect a socialist. Hey, idiot, why don't you define it first?
Yeah.
You have never, ever defined it. And so it drives me crazy. Look, you want to talk about dads? Listen, one more story about my dad. He's driven out of Turkey partly by militant communists, okay? So he's a guy who had nothing, started his own company after he got a free education, became a mechanical engineer, hires about 100 people, I believe, in that factory. And at the time, there's huge fights between the left and the right. And back then, there are militant communists, and they threaten his life. And he comes to America. Does he then turn around and then go, okay, well, since that happened to me, I don't want you to get daycare? What? Since that happened to me from a totally different guy who has his own interpretation of what communism means, I don't want your kid to get health care. That makes no sense. He does not say that. Is anybody on television going to clarify what socialism is?
Of course not. Of course not. What are you talking about?
Look, the fire department is socialist. The police department is socialist. The United States military is socialist. It is not a private corporation. It is run by the government, and it is gigantic, and the government runs it.
What about their health care? The Congress?
Lawmakers take advantage of their socialist health care.
Yeah, and an important distinction there as well. The distinction between healthcare overall and healthcare insurance, right? And so Bernie Sanders' proposal is not the UK proposal, which actually takes over and has the government take over all of healthcare. And the UK is not communist, they're socialist. They're a mixed economy like we all are. Right? So his proposal is only for the government to provide health insurance, as they do in a sense fire and police. If you're about to get killed, we send you and we don't ask if you're poor, middle class, or rich. Whether you're in a fire or you're being mugged, or if your kid has cancer, we shouldn't ask, well, are you rich enough? Oh, you're not? Let the kid die. Let the kid die in the fire, let him get shot to death, or let him die because he can't get treatment. No, that's not who we are, because in reality, America is in that sense socialist.
Like what you see? Click the subscribe button below and don't forget to ring the bell to never miss another video from the Young Turks.